Thanksgiving was supposed to be a time for family, laughter, and good food. At least, that's what it had always meant to me. This year, after weeks of drowning in deadlines and endless meetings, I was clinging to the idea of a warm meal and familiar faces more than ever. I could already picture it, the cozy lighting of the Oakwood diner, the rich scent of roasted turkey in the air, and my dad, Richard, sitting at his usual spot, pretending not to be excited about the holiday. My older brother, Daniel, would probably be on his phone half the time, and my younger sister, Lily, would roll her eyes at his bad jokes. Dinners with them were always chaotic, but they made me feel grounded. At 5 p.m., I texted my dad, "Hey, what time should I be there?" A few minutes later, his reply came, 7 p.m. "See you then." Simple. No warmth, no excitement. But that was just how my dad was, straight to the point. Still, I wasn't going to read too much into it. I was looking forward to this. By 6:30, I was ready. Jacket on, keys in hand. The last thing I wanted was to be late. God knows Daniel would make some smug comment about it. I pulled into the restaurant's parking lot at exactly 6:55. But the moment I stepped out of my car, something felt off. No familiar cars, no sign of my family inside through the large diner windows. Just an unsettling quiet. Frowning, the first checked my phone. No new messages. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe they were just running late. Still, as I pushed open the restaurant door, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling in my chest. Something wasn't right. The moment I stepped into the Oakwood diner, a wave of warm air and the scent of roasted turkey wrapped around me. It should have felt welcoming. Instead, my stomach twisted. I scanned the room, expecting to see my dad's familiar stern expression or Lily's annoyed glance from across the table. But there was no sign of them. The booths were filled with strangers, some laughing over half-eaten plates of mashed potatoes, others clinking their glasses together in toasts. I took a slow step forward, still trying to convince myself I'd just beaten them here. Maybe they were parking. Maybe they were at the back of the restaurant. But then I caught sight of Eric, one of the waiters who had been working here for years. His eyes widened slightly when he saw me, and before I could say anything, he gave me an awkward smile. "Ethan, hey," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. Your family was here earlier." His words hit like a punch to the gut. "What?" My voice came out quieter than I expected. "Yeah, they came in around 6, Eric continued, shifting on his feet. "Stayed for a while. Left maybe 20 minutes ago." 6. An entire hour before I was supposed to be here. I blinked, trying to process. They didn't wait for me? I yanked my phone from my pocket, my fingers suddenly unsteady as I checked my messages. A single text from my dad. "We couldn't wait. Hope you understand." And another from Daniel, just minutes later. "Didn't want the food to get cold." That was it. No call, no follow-up, just a couple of cold, careless sentences. For a moment, I just stood there, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. They really went ahead without me. Eric shifted uncomfortably. I thought you knew." I forced out a breath, swallowing the lump in my throat. Yeah, I guess one do now." He hesitated. "You want to sit? I can still get you something." I looked around the restaurant again, at the booths filled with people who hadn't been abandoned by their families tonight. The thought of sitting here alone, picking at a plate of food while my dad and brother had already gone home without a second thought, it made my chest feel tight. "No," I muttered. "I think I'm good." Without another word, I turned and walked out. The cold air hit me as soon as I stepped outside, but it wasn't nearly as sharp as the sting in my chest. They didn't even wait. I stood in the parking lot, my hands clenched at my sides, staring at the empty space where my dad's car should have been. Thanksgiving was supposed to be about family, about being together, but tonight all I felt was alone. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers ached. My phone sat in the passenger seat, the screen still glowing with those 2 emotionless texts. "We couldn't wait. Hope you understand. Didn't want the food to get cold. Hope I understand." Understand what, exactly? That I wasn't important enough to wait for? That my own family, the people who were supposed to be there for me, could just go on with their night like I didn't matter? I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. Unbelievable. The parking lot was nearly empty now, just a few scattered cars left. Inside the diner, people were still talking and laughing, their Thanksgiving dinners stretching into late evening. But for me, the night was already over. A part of me wanted to call my dad, to demand an explanation. Another part of me knew it wouldn't change anything. They had already made their choice. Instead of driving home, I just drove. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just needed to move, to put space between myself and the gnawing emptiness in my chest. The city streets blurred past in streaks of orange and white, streetlights flickering against the windshield. I tried to push the thoughts away, tried to focus on anything else, but no matter how many turns I took, no matter how many songs played softly through the radio, my mind kept looping back to the same question. Why didn't they wait? Had I done something wrong? Was I that easy to forget? Eventually, I found myself pulling into an empty parking lot near Ridgewood Park. It was quiet here, the kind of quiet that stretched wide and heavy. A few distant lampposts cast pale light over the benches and leaf-covered pathways, but otherwise, it was just me and the cold November air. I killed the engine and sat there for a long moment, staring at the darkened trees ahead. Then, without really thinking, I grabbed my phone. No missed calls, no new messages. Of course not. I clenched my jaw and tossed the phone onto the dashboard. The silence pressed in on me, thick and suffocating. I needed air. Stepping out of the car, I shoved my hands into my jacket pockets and walked toward one of the benches near the pond. The wind bit at my skin, sharp enough to make my eyes water, but I didn't care. I sank onto the cold metal seat, staring at the rippling water ahead. Thanksgiving. What a joke. I thought back to all the years before, how my family would gather around the table, passing dishes, laughing at inside jokes. How my dad would pretend not to care about the holiday, only to be the first one to go for seconds. How Daniel, despite being an ass most of the time, would always fight me for the last piece of pie. And Lily, she used to sit next to me, always making sarcastic comments under her breath, just loud enough for me to hear. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And now, I didn't know what it was anymore. The wind howled through the trees, kicking up dry leaves around my feet. I sat there, letting the cold seep in, numbing everything. Maybe that was better. Maybe if I sat here long enough, the ache in my chest would fade too. I didn't know how long I stayed like that before my phone buzzed. At first I ignored it, but then it buzzed again, and again. With a sigh, I pulled it from my pocket, squinting at the screen. Lily. I hesitated before swiping it open. Dad's upset. You should come back. That was it? No apology? No explanation. Just another expectation. A fresh wave of anger surged through me. I should come back? Like I was the one who needed to fix things? My fingers hovered over the keyboard, itching to type out something sharp. Something that would make her understand just how much they'd hurt me. But then I stopped. What was the point? Would it even matter? Would they actually listen? Or would they just brush it off like Daniel had in his text? I exhaled slowly, my breath curling in the cold night air. Then, without another thought, I blocked her number. I wasn't going back. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. Shoving my phone back into my pocket, I leaned back against the bench, staring up at the dark sky. For the first time in my life, I let myself wonder, what if I walked away from them for good? 3 days passed. I didn't go back. I didn't call. I didn't answer the texts that trickled in, mostly from Lily, a couple from my dad, and nothing at all from Daniel. The first told myself I didn't care, that I was fine. But the truth, I kept checking my phone every morning, every night, every time I heard a notification, but no one had actually said anything that mattered. No real apology, no acknowledgement of what they did, just half-hearted attempts to brush it under the rug, as if ignoring it long enough would make it disappear. Then, on the third day, my phone buzzed with a new message from my dad. Can we meet? I need to talk to you. Not I'm sorry, not I should have waited, just can we meet? I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to block his number the way I had with Lily's. But another part of me, the part that had been playing the past 3 days over and over in my head, needed to hear what he had to say. So I responded, fine. Where? We met at a cafe near his office. A small, quiet place with worn leather booths and the faint smell of burnt coffee lingering in the air. When I walked in, my dad was already sitting by the window, his hands folded in front of him, a half-empty cup of black coffee at his side. He looked tired, older than I remembered. For a second, I almost felt guilty. Almost. I slid into the seat across from him. Neither of us spoke at first. The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. Finally, he cleared his throat. I know you're upset. I let out a short laugh. You think? He exhaled through his nose, rubbing a hand over his face. Look, Ethan, He hesitated, then sighed. I should have waited. We all should have. I crossed my arms, waiting. But, he continued, and there it was. The but. But you've been so busy lately, he said, as if that justified everything. We didn't even know if you'd come, and the food was getting cold, so I scoffed, shaking my head. So you just decided for me? It wasn't like that. Really? Because it sure as hell felt like that. His jaw tightened. I didn't mean to hurt you. I leaned forward. Then why didn't you call? Why didn't anyone check if I was on my way? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. He didn't have an answer. Because there was no answer, no excuse that could make it okay. I swallowed the lump in my throat. You know what the worst part is? I said quietly. It's not even about the food. It's not about Thanksgiving. It's about the fact that you didn't even think of me, that it didn't even cross your mind to wait. His expression flickered just for a second. That's not true, isn't it? I shot back. Because if it were me, if you or Daniel had been late, I would have waited. I wouldn't have just moved on like you didn't matter. He looked down at his coffee, his fingers tightening around the cup. Ethan, he exhaled slowly. I don't know what you want me to say. I shook my head. I don't want you to say anything, Dad. I want you to care. The words came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't regret them, because they were true. The silence stretched again, heavier this time. Then, the cafe door opened, and a familiar voice cut through the tension. Dad says you're here. I turned my head just in time to see Daniel walking toward us, his hands shoved in his coat pockets. His expression was unreadable, but the slight downturn of his mouth made my stomach tighten. He slid into the booth next to Dad, his gaze flicking to me. So, what's this about? I clenched my jaw. Seriously? What? He shrugged. I don't get why you're making this such a big deal. I inhaled sharply, gripping the edge of the table. Because, Daniel, it is a big deal. You all went ahead without me. You didn't even think to check if I was coming. He rolled his eyes. It's just dinner. Something in me snapped. No, Daniel, it's not just dinner. I snapped. It's the fact that this isn't the first time this has happened. That I'm always the one making an effort, and you all just expect me to be okay with being left out. His face hardened. You're overreacting. I let out a sharp laugh. Right. Of course I am. I pushed back from the table, the chair scraping against the floor as I stood. You know what? I said, my voice cold. Forget it. I shouldn't have come. Dad looked up, frowning. Ethan, wait, no, I cut him off. I've spent the last 3 days waiting for one of you to actually care, to actually say something that proves I matter to this family. I looked between them, my chest tight, and all I got was a half-assed we didn't mean to. Daniel muttered something under his breath, shaking his head. I turned to my dad. If you really want to fix this, maybe start by actually listening for once. With that, I turned and walked out. I didn't look back, but as I stepped into the cold evening air, my heart pounded, and for the first time, I wondered if I was finally done trying. I drove home in silence. No music, no podcasts, just the low hum of the engine and the occasional blinker clicking as I turned down empty streets. My mind was loud, though. Every word from that conversation kept looping in my head. It's just dinner. You're overreacting. We didn't mean to. And my favorite dad's tired sigh, as if I was the difficult one for expecting basic decency. I gritted my teeth and tightened my grip on the steering wheel. They still didn't get it, even after I spelled it out for them, even after 3 days of silence. Even after I sat across from them and practically handed them the words they needed to say, they still didn't get it. By the time I pulled into my apartment complex, I was drained. The anger had burned itself out, leaving something heavier in its place: exhaustion. I climbed out of the car, locked the doors, and trudged upstairs. Inside, my apartment was still and quiet. My jacket hit the back of a chair. My keys clattered onto the counter. And then I just stood there, staring at nothing. I didn't even know what I was waiting for. Some kind of sign? A sudden realization that would make this all easier? Instead, my phone buzzed. I ignored it at first, but when it buzzed again, I sighed and pulled it from my pocket. A voicemail from my dad. I hesitated. Every part of me wanted to delete it, to shove my phone away and move on. But something made me press play. Hey, Ethan, it's Dad. A long pause. A deep breath. I know you don't want to hear from me right now, and I get it. I do. I narrowed my eyes, skepticism creeping in. Do you, though? Another pause. Look, I messed up. We messed up. I don't know why I didn't just wait for you, and I don't know why it took me this long to admit it. That made me freeze. He exhaled heavily. You were right about everything. You've always been the one making the effort, and we've taken that for granted. I sat down, gripping the phone a little tighter. I'm not good at this, he continued, voice rougher now. but I don't want to lose you over a stupid mistake. And if that means proving to you that you matter to this family, then that's what I'll do." Silence. Then, quietly, "I just hope it's not too late." The message ended. I stared at my phone for a long time. Then I played it again and again. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't some dramatic, heartfelt speech that fixed everything, but it was something, and that was more than I'd gotten in years. I exhaled slowly, leaning back against the couch. My thoughts twisted in a dozen different directions. Did I believe him? Could he actually change? Or was this just another empty promise? Something he said because he knew I was slipping away. I wanted to trust it. I wanted to believe that, for once, I wouldn't be the only one trying. But after everything, how could I? My phone buzzed again. A text this time. "Lily, I know you're mad, but please just talk to him. He's trying." I closed my eyes. Trying. It was more than Daniel had done. More than any of them had done. And maybe, just maybe, it was enough to give him one last chance. I didn't call him back that night. I wasn't ready yet. But the next morning I woke up, stared at my phone for a long time, and then typed out a single message. "We'll see." Then I hit send, and for the first time in days, I felt lighter. Not fixed, not healed, but lighter. And maybe for now, that was enough. Story 2. There's something about a quiet bar on a Friday night that feels like home. Not the raucous kind, packed wall to wall, with drunk college kids spilling beer on your boots. No, I'm talking about the kind of place where the bartender knows your order before you even sit down, where the jukebox is stocked with country classics, and where you can sit at the back with a burger, a cold beer, and your own thoughts. That was my spot, my routine. And that night was supposed to be like any other. I had just bitten into my sandwich when the door swung open, letting in a rush of cold air. I glanced up, expecting to see some regulars, maybe a group of ranch hands kicking off the weekend. But instead, I saw her, Olivia, and she wasn't alone. She was hanging onto my best friend Daniel, clinging to his arm, looking up at him the way she used to look at me. My stomach dropped like a lead weight. It wasn't just that they were together, it was the way they were together, laughing, whispering, holding hands, like a couple. I was frozen for a second, my beer halfway to my lips. Maybe my brain was trying to come up with some excuse, some explanation that didn't mean what it obviously meant. But deep down, I knew. She lied to me. She told me she had plans with her friends tonight. That was the reason we couldn't meet up. And here she was, draped all over Daniel, like they had been together for months. I clenched my jaw, setting my beer down with a little too much force. I could have walked out right then, could have ignored the whole thing, let them have their little secret, but I was done being the fool. I stood up and walked straight toward them. Daniel's eyes flickered with recognition. The moment he saw me, followed by something else, panic. Olivia, on the other hand, just stared, her mouth slightly open, as if she had been caught shoplifting. "Charlie," the first, I held up a hand. "Save it." Then I turned to Daniel, my so-called best friend. "You really thought I wouldn't find out?" Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "Man, I was gonna tell you, yeah? When? After you married her?" Olivia gasped, offended, as if I was the one who had done something wrong. But I wasn't interested in her theatrics. I leaned in close to Daniel, keeping my voice low enough that only he could hear. "You had one job, man. One rule. You don't go after your friend's girl. Charlie, come on." "It just happened," he muttered. I gave a humorless laugh. "ITJUST happened, huh? Like you tripped and landed in her bed?" His face darkened, but I wasn't about to let him play the victim. I turned back to Olivia, shaking my head. "You could have just told me you weren't happy. You didn't have to do this." She crossed her arms. "You don't understand." "No, I do understand." I cut her off. "You want someone with more money, someone who can buy you things. You should have just said that." I didn't wait for a response. I just walked out, pushing through the barred doors, the crisp night air stinging my face. My phone buzzed nonstop the next morning. Olivia called 3 times. I didn't answer. Then Daniel tried. I finally picked up. "What?" There was silence on the other end. Then a sigh. "Charlie, man, I'm sorry. I messed up." "Yeah, no kidding. She told me you two weren't that serious." That hit like a punch to the gut. "Are you serious right now?" I said, barely keeping my voice steady. "We've been together for 6 months. You've seen us together every damn weekend. We talked about marriage, Daniel." He was quiet for a moment. "Look, man, it's not just some fling. We have feelings for each other." I nearly threw my phone across the room. "So how long?" I asked through gritted teeth. "What? How?" A long silence. Then, barely above a whisper, he admitted, 3 times. 3 times. I felt sick. And Alice? I asked. Another pause. What? Your girlfriend, Daniel. You know, the one you've been dating for 2 years? More silence. Does she know you've been screwing around behind her back too? Yeah, that's what I thought. I ended the call and threw my phone on the couch. My hands were shaking, not just from anger, from betrayal. I'd lost my best friend and my girlfriend in one night. But the only person I really felt bad for? Alice. She deserved better. And I had a feeling she had no idea what was coming. For the next couple of weeks, I kept my head down. Work, gym, sleep, repeat. Anything to keep my mind from spiraling into the mess Daniel and Olivia had made of my life. But no matter how hard I tried, their betrayal sat in the back of my mind like a bad taste. I couldn't wash out. The worst part, they were still together. Apparently, Daniel didn't just steal my girlfriend, he was actually keeping her, which meant that every time I walked into work, there was a solid chance I'd overhear his voice, or worse, see him. I did my best to ignore it. I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of thinking I cared. But then, one afternoon, my phone rang. It was Alice. I hesitated for a second before picking up. Hey, I said cautiously. Charlie, she sighed. I don't even know what to say. Her voice was soft, almost defeated. You don't have to say anything, I replied. You found out, huh? Yeah, she said bitterly, and I feel like the biggest idiot for not seeing it sooner. I ran a hand through my hair. You and me both. Silence stretched between us. Not awkward, just heavy. Then, Alice said something that caught me off guard. I think Olivia's been cheating on you for longer than you think. I frowned. What do you mean? She sighed. Before I found out about Daniel, the first used to see Olivia having lunch with her boss. A lot. And not in a normal, hey, let's go over these reports kind of way. It always looked intimate. But I didn't want to assume, and I sure as hell didn't want to be the person to tell you if I was wrong. I clenched my jaw. Of course, Olivia had been working on an upgrade. Daniel probably wasn't even her first choice, just the idiot who fell for her act the hardest. I shook my head. Honestly, doesn't even surprise me anymore. Alice scoffed. Guess that makes 2 of us. I hesitated, then said, You okay? She let out a small laugh, one of those bitter, half-choked ones. Would it be weird if I said no? Because, Charlie, the first feel like an idiot. I wasted 2 years on a guy who didn't think twice about throwing it away. I exhaled. Yeah, I get that. Another pause. Then, almost shyly, Alice said, Would you wanna maybe meet up sometime? Just to talk? I blinked. I hadn't expected that. But if I was being honest with myself, the idea didn't sound bad. Not at all. Yeah, I said. I'd like that. We met up a few days later at the grocery store by pure coincidence. I was reaching for a carton of eggs when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Charlie? I turned, and there she was. Alice. I'd always thought she was pretty, but seeing her then, out of the work environment, in jeans and a casual sweater, her brown hair tied up in a messy bun, it hit me different. She smiled. Fancy meeting you here. I chuckled. Didn't take you for the kind of person to stalk me at the supermarket. She grinned. Busted. This is all part of my elaborate revenge plan. I laughed, and just like that, it didn't feel weird anymore. It felt easy. We stood there for a while, catching up, talking about work, life, dumb TV shows. She told me about a horror movie she'd watched recently that scared her so badly she refused to sleep without a light on for 2 nights straight. You're telling me that you, a full-grown woman, were scared of a movie with a puppet? I teased. Alice rolled her eyes. Charlie, it was a demon puppet. That makes it at least 10 times worse. I smirked. I dunno. I think that just makes it funnier. She punched my arm playfully. You're the worst. For the first time in weeks, I felt normal again. We ended up grabbing coffee together that weekend, and then dinner the next. It wasn't a date at least, not officially, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't noticing things about Alice I hadn't before, like how she actually listened when I talked, how she laughed at my stupid jokes, how she wasn't constantly glued to her phone, waiting for someone more important to text her. She was just real, and I hadn't realized how much I needed that until now. Toward the end of the night, I found myself asking something I hadn't planned on. So, would you want to do this again? Alice gave me a look, one of those mischievous, knowing ones. Charlie, I've been waiting for you to ask me that since the moment I ran into you at the grocery store. I laughed. Well, damn. Could have saved me some stress if you just told me. She grinned. Where's the fun in that? I walked her to her car, hands in my pockets. When we reached her door, she turned to me, hesitating for just a second. Then, before I could say anything else, she leaned in and kissed me, soft, quick, just enough to leave me completely stunned. She pulled back, smirking. See you next weekend, Charlie. Then she got into her car and drove away, leaving me standing there like an idiot with a dumb grin on my face. And for the first time since Olivia and Daniel ripped my heart out, I didn't feel broken. I felt like I was finally moving forward. The next week at work flew by, probably because, for the first time in months, I wasn't spending every spare second of my life thinking about Olivia and Daniel. I was thinking about Alice, that damn kiss. It wasn't even some grand, dramatic thing, it was quick, just a moment. But hell, if it didn't knock the wind out of me. I tried to play it cool, act like I wasn't replaying it in my head on a loop. But every time I caught myself grinning for no reason, I knew I was screwed. And honestly, I didn't even mind. Saturday rolled around, and I picked Alice up for our official first date. Not just coffee, not just let's grab dinner and talk about our trash exes. A real, actual date. She opened the door wearing jeans, boots, and a Western-style blouse that hugged her figure just right. Her hair was down, framing her face in soft waves. Damn, I blurted out before I could stop myself. Alice smirked. That good, huh? I chuckled, shaking my head. Yeah, that good. I opened the truck door for her, and she climbed in, her perfume filling the cab. Sweet. A little floral, but not overpowering, just her. We headed to my favorite country bar, the same one I caught Olivia and Daniel in. Some guys might have picked a different place to avoid bad memories, but I wasn't about to let two cheaters ruin my favorite spot. I wasn't running from anything anymore. The night started out perfect. We grabbed a booth, ordered a couple of drinks, and fell into easy conversation. Turns out, Alice and I had more in common than I realized. She grew up just a county over from where I did small-town Kentucky life. Big family, strict but loving parents. She even went to a few of my high school's football games back in the day. At one point I asked, "Wait, how do I not remember seeing you?" Alice took a sip of her beer, then gave me a look. "You actually did see me once," she admitted. "You just didn't know it." I raised a brow. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then said, "Do you remember a game your senior year? An away game. Afterward, in the tunnel, you stopped two guys from dragging some girl off." I frowned, trying to pull the memory up. It was foggy, but yeah, I remembered. A couple of drunk guys hassling some girl in a yellow sweater, trying to pull her somewhere. She clearly didn't want to go. I stepped in, threw one of them to the ground, shoved the other back, and told them that if they so much as breathed in her direction again, they'd be leaving in an ambulance. Then I walked away. Didn't even stick around to check on the girl. Alice bit her lip. "That was me, Charlie." I stared at her. "Wait, what?" She nodded. "I never saw your face. Just your jersey number 67. I spent weeks trying to find out who you were, but no one knew. All I got was a first name, Charles." The first blinked. "Holy shit." Alice smiled softly. "Guess it was meant to be." I ran a hand through my hair, still trying to process that. I had met Alice years ago, saved her, even, and had no clue. Meanwhile, she had been looking for me all that time. Fate? Coincidence? I didn't know. But either way, it hit hard. I reached across the table, took her hand, and gave it a squeeze. "Well, I'm damn glad you found me," Alice squeezed back. "Me too." The night only got better from there. We drank, we talked, we laughed real, belly aching, tears in your eyes kinda laughter. Then the band kicked off their set, and I pulled Alice onto the dance floor. 2 slow songs in, I was holding her close, swaying to the music, and everything felt right. Then she looked up at me and said, "I haven't been this happy in a long time." I brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "Me neither." Alice smiled. "Kiss me again, Charlie." So I did, and this time, it wasn't quick. By the time I dropped Alice off, it was late. She lingered at her door, biting her lip. "You want to come in?" My brain screamed, "Hell, yes," but my heart told me to slow down. I tucked a finger under her chin, tilting her face up. "Not tonight," I said softly. "Not 'cause I don't want to, but 'cause I want this to last." Alice's eyes softened. "Yeah, me too." I kissed her one last time, then watched her disappear inside. Driving home, I realized something. I wasn't just getting over Olivia and Daniel. I was winning, because while they had each other, wrapped up in their selfish, messy drama, I had Alice, and I had a feeling she was the best thing to ever happen to me. A couple of months flew by, and life had never been better. Alice and I, solid. What started as a way to move past betrayal turned into something real, something I hadn't even known I was missing. We weren't just dating, we were building something. Every week we made time for each other, whether it was a simple dinner at my place or a weekend trip to the amusement park. We had inside jokes, late-night talks, and a level of trust I never even came close to having with Olivia. Alice was different. She wasn't constantly looking for something better. She was just happy being with me. And damn, that felt good. Meanwhile, at work, one had the time of my life watching Daniel squirm. Dude thought he had everything figured out, that he could snake his way into a new relationship without consequences. But turns out, he was dead wrong. One day, Alice dropped some golden news over lunch. "So, rumor has it," she said, sipping her iced tea, "Olivia's pregnant." I almost choked on my drink. "Wait, what?" Alice nodded, fighting back a smirk. Apparently, they rushed off to Vegas last month to get married. And now, surprise, surprise, there's a baby on the way. I leaned back in my chair, shaking my head. Damn, that's fast. Alice shrugged. Guess she really wanted that rich husband's security. That part didn't surprise me. Olivia had always been more interested in money than love. And since Daniel's family had a reputation for being loaded, she probably thought she hit the jackpot. But there was just one little problem. Daniel wasn't rich. His parents were, and he lived way beyond his means. I bet she thinks she's set for life, I muttered, smirking. Alice grinned. Yeah, well, she might want to rethink that. That got my attention. Why? Alice leaned in, lowering her voice. Because Daniel's in deep debt. I blinked. No way. Oh yeah, apparently. He maxed out his credit cards, trying to keep up appearances. And now, with a baby on the way, he's panicking. I let out a low whistle. That was karma hitting like a damn freight train. The guy stabbed me in the back for a woman who only wanted him for his non-existent money. And now he was drowning in debt with a baby on the way. Couldn't have happened to a better person. The real kicker came a few weeks later. Alice and I were out shopping when her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and let out a laugh. Oh my God. No way. I raised a brow. What? She turned the screen toward me. It was Olivia. I stared at the name, then at Alice. You gonna answer? Alice smirked. Hell yeah. She swiped to accept. Hello? I couldn't hear what Olivia was saying, but whatever it was, Alice was eating it up. Wait, slow down, Alice said, putting the call on speaker. You're saying Daniel's not the father? My jaw dropped. What the hell? I muttered under my breath. Olivia's voice crackled through the speaker, full of panic. I don't know what happened, she whined. Daniel took a DNA test, and it came back negative. Now he's accusing me of cheating, and his family won't help us with money, and Alice cut her off. Well, yeah, Olivia, you did cheat, Olivia stammered. But no buts, Alice said flatly. You screwed around, lied, and now it's biting you in the ass. And honestly, couldn't have happened to a nicer person. I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. Olivia huffed. I just thought maybe you'd understand. We were friends, Alice. Alice snorted. We were never friends, Olivia. You used me to get close to Daniel, just like you used Charlie before that. But now, you got nothing, and I don't feel bad for you, at all. Before Olivia could get another word in, Alice hung up. I stared at her, grinning. That was brutal. Alice shrugged. She deserved worse. She wasn't wrong. Later that night, as we sat on my couch, I wrapped an arm around Alice and kissed the top of her head. You know, I murmured, I think this is the best revenge I could have ever asked for. Alice tilted her head up. What? Watching Olivia crash and burn, I chuckled. No, us, she smiled. Yeah, I nodded. They thought they were winning, Alice. Thought they were upgraded, and look at 'em now broke, miserable, and stuck with each other. Alice laughed. And us? I kissed her softly. We're thriving. She melted into me, sighing contently. Yeah, Charlie, we really are. And for the first time in my life, I knew I had won in every way that mattered.